How
George,
you doing?
doing great. How you doing?
Good. Been a
Good to
long
see you.
time since I talked to you.
Yeah. I had the privilege of being in the background part of your recent professional training.
Oh,
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Well,
that,
um,
that
well,
that was quite touching.
sorry, I didn't catch that, George. I talked over you accidentally.
It, I was saying it was very touching. That's what I liked. It was just very touching.
Hmm,
Yeah,
nice.
I was honestly, I was listening to Linda and I was thinking, wow, my goodness, that woman is just doing amazing. And Mark, oh, it's so lovely to listen to Mark, so lovely. And then you said one or two things, and I literally had to pick myself off the floor. They were so profoundly simple.
So I'm going to just kind of very briefly introduce this because the thing that prompted this call is it's part of a number of things that are happening in relation to a new Three Principles Scotland organisation that's emerging with the intention of spreading Sid Banks' work throughout Scotland and being allied to the Three Principles global community, which both George and Linda are kind of key parts of, and movers and shakers have got that thing going. And what we wanted to do is have all sorts of different kinds of resources available to people who are coming to the principles for the first time, discovering it from the first time, or deepening their understanding, and also for people who are wishing to share this work in whatever way. So one of the resources, of course, the recent book that the two Georges wrote. I think it's really George's work illustrated by George, if I can put it that way. Is that right, George McRae?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not going to introduce either of you beyond saying that I know both George and Linda have been involved in this work since the really earliest days of Sid himself sharing his experience, and that have been in the kind of forefront since that time. George McRae, based here in Scotland, has come to the work sometime in the last decade, and no doubt, George McRae, you'll have an opportunity to say a bit more about your route into that. But perhaps one of you could kick off and just tell us a little bit about the book and how you came to collaborate on it from what is it, 6,000, 9,000 miles apart or whatever it is.
George McRae, why don't you start?
Yeah, there you
Okay. Thank you. Well, really interesting for me. I had the privilege to do a kind of brand workshop under the umbrella of 3PGC. I think maybe it could be 8 or 9 years ago. Aaron Turner was the one that organized it. And even in that session, I felt compelled to share one of the illustrations that I'd been looking at the time, which is the one that appears on the front cover.
Do you want to hold that up, George?
Yeah. So, yeah. So this illustration, notion, idea, concept, or simple explanation of the three principles, it was profound for me. And I got one of our designers at the time, Jack, to illustrate it. And then when I was at that conference, I gave Linda and George and various other, I think Mark was there as well, Mark Howard. I gave them a copy. And then what happened was probably, I don't know, maybe 18 months later, George Pransky got in touch with me to say, look, I'm working on this book. I'd quite like to use this illustration. Can I use this illustration? And I was, that's super cool. Of course, lovely, lovely. And then what happened was, I think a couple of years passed. And by this point, I'm kind of secretly in the background waiting for this lovely book of metaphors to come out and hadn't seen it. And so I got in touch with the Pranskys through the main office, and Terry, lovely Terry, she said to me, George, you won't believe this, but if you had called me last week, I would have said that I've got all the illustrations sorted. But as of this week, we don't feel we have. And that was my kind of entry point into working with. And I was dead excited to work on it. Super excited to work on it.
Thanks, George. Thanks.
You're welcome.
George and maybe Linda too. I wonder if you could say a little more about the book and the title and just the importance of metaphor in this work.
Well, that's a
or indeed anything else that you want to say about it.
That's a really wonderful question, because in our time with Sid, he would stress that metaphors. He often say that metaphors were the way to teach this understanding, because metaphors point to something very simply, and there's a picture. You have the visual, and you have the story of the metaphor, and it's just a brilliant way to teach. So that was the inspiration for the book. And George, he came by metaphors naturally. It's just always a way that he's been. Even before Sid, he's just thought in terms of metaphor. So eventually he decided he wanted to do a book.
I've been reading it over the past, sort of past couple of weeks, and it just, and what I guess I hadn't realised how so many of these metaphors have just kind of wormed their way into how I talk about this work and pass it on. It's and so I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for all of those metaphors that you've coined or used and shared with us, and it's really delightful.
You know what? George's favorite metaphor is the clunker and the classic. That's his favorite metaphor. You want to talk about it? The clunker and the classic? Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, you read it.
Okay. All right.
Linda, it was one of my favorite ones to draw.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm having to find. Okay, the clunker and the classic. One morning, a man was heading out the door for work. His state of mind was low, which means his feeling was low, like he was in a low mood. He hadn't slept, and he was fighting with his wife. He'd forgotten to make breakfast, and had spilled toothpaste on his shirt. And as he was getting in his car to go to work, a neighbor walked by. The neighbor said, "Nice ride," referring to the man's car. The man thought about his rusted hubcaps and the crack in the windshield. He could also see the car was due for a paint job. His neighbor must be crazy to compliment him on his car, or maybe he was just being rude. The next morning, the man was in a better mood. He and his wife had made amends. They weren't fighting anymore. He'd slept great. He had time to make breakfast. He was excited for his day. And as he was getting into his car, he remembered what his neighbor had said. He looked at the car, and he was looking at a different car. He realized how well it had held together over the years. My neighbor was right, the man thought to himself. I'm so lucky to have this classic car. And then the last line is, our state of mind changes how we view reality. And I think everybody knows that when they're in a low mood, life looks different than when they're in a high mood. It's like, when they're in a high mood, they see what to appreciate. And when they're in a low mood, they see what to criticize.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And it's just the way people are.
That's just human nature.
Human nature. And it's really, it's not about changing yourself. It's about realizing how you are as a human being, or how human beings are.
Yeah. Linda, I don't know if it was you that kind of coined, or George, or someone else, but kind of coined the use of this sort of up and down wave as a depiction of how we another way of, even simpler way perhaps, of looking at the same thing. But whoever it was, I'm immensely grateful to that. And it's interesting because it's so simple, and yet it really changed things for me on the very first weekend that I went to, which was with Aaron Turner and Jamie Smart. And somebody, I think it was attributed to one of you, said we often talk about, what human beings do. And at that point, I had been really striving, and I was in, a 12-step recovery program. I'd been striving for 20 years to make my life better. And in that moment, it just flew off, because I thought, I'm already here. I can live with that. It's good enough if it doesn't change for the rest of my life. And it's extraordinary how it is quite extraordinary how something so simple, whether it's that illustration or the chapter in the book and the way it's illustrated there, can trigger such an immense insight, such a helpful insight, that really it would be no exaggeration to say change the course of my life. I know it's not. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I just totally understand and relate to that, because me too. In other words, it's like you think something's wrong. When you don't understand, you think something's wrong. And then when you understand, you go, oh, there's nothing wrong. That's just life. That's just human beings. I remember having the insight, listening to Sid, when I realized my moods weren't coming from outside, that they were coming from within me. That was hugely immense. It's so helpful, because when I thought they were coming at me, I was like, where are they coming from?
Yeah.
And then when I realized they were coming from my thought and consciousness, it settled me down.
Yeah.
So there's these little insights that you have about how people work, how you work, that really allow you to just not think about yourself.
Yeah.
The one that really impacted me, there's many of these impacted me, but the one that was huge for me, because I was living what I thought was a really good and exciting life, I didn't realize I was on the speedboat.
Oh, that's a good one, George. Yeah, that's a good one.
And in actual fact, when I came to illustrate speedboat, sailboat, it made no sense for me to draw the speedboat.
Yeah.
So lovely. Thank you, George. Thank you for that one.
Yeah.
Is there another favorite one that you'd like to talk about?
I think investment involvement.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's so helpful to business people.
Yeah. Investment involvement is kind of a businessman's metaphor.
Yeah.
A business person's metaphor.
Good one. Business person. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It really, again, it allows you to make sense of life. That's what I think these metaphors do, or insights do, allow you to make sense of life. Okay, just hang on. Okay. Involvement is how much you throw your heart and soul into what you're doing. People do their best when they're involved. They also get more enjoyment out of what they're doing. Investment, which is the opposite of involvement, is how much you care about outcome. It's asking how emotionally invested you are in being successful. When you are invested, or when we are invested, we feel as if our well-being is attached to outcome. If things don't happen in our favor, this affects our mood and how we see ourselves. So it just makes us adds insecurity. Investment adds the feeling of insecurity or tension or stress. We would all do well to not worry about outcome. Humans often live their life worrying about outcome. We worry if this will happen or that will happen, if we're making the right choice. This takes so much energy and thought to think about all these things. Winning or losing the game is only a small sliver of our lives. We spend most of our time playing. Why not choose involvement and enjoy it? So when you're involved and you throw yourself into it, you're enjoying the process, and you're not preoccupied with the end game.
Yeah.
And it's so helpful for people to understand that.
And also, George, I've got to tell you, it was one time I had a conversation with you, and you said something, and I felt the effect of it, but it was only after I was touched by the depth of it. And this is what you said. You said, George, I'm all in.
Yeah, that's true. That's true about how I live my life. I realize.
I'm all in.
And you guys were all in, if I'm kind of right and thinking about when I've heard you tell your story from early on. I mean, it was a very courageous and bold step, I guess, to make the shifts that you did after you came across Sid's work.
Well, I know from the outside it looked that way, but from the inside it was just a pleasure. It was there wasn't any other. The choice looked perfect.
We thought we'd
found gold.
We found gold.
Yeah. We thought we found gold, and we just our job was to mine it.
Yeah.
And it was a pleasure to mine it. But I know from the outside,
it looked like we were taking a huge risk.
And we were, if you thought about it.
Yeah.
But we didn't think about it. All we thought about is, oh my goodness, what we found that would be helpful to people.
We figured we'd found a gold mine.
Yeah.
And George, I loved what you said about your dad's view of it. He was like a bit shocked and.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I tell that story of my dad coming upon this understanding. He never did understand why I was so excited about what I'd found. He was hoping that I would become a banker or a fund manager or something like that. And
or work in an institution, a psychiatric institution, work it's something that was conservative.
Yeah.
Do you think he saw the change in you over time, George? Even if he didn't fully get it himself, do you think he?
I don't think he saw it. I think he didn't take me very seriously when I was going through the change, and he was essentially worried about me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he said to me, "When's George gonna grow up?" That's what he said.
When's he gonna reach his potential?
Yeah.
It is an interesting thing that I suppose it comes back to investment versus involvement, that that we can offer this to anyone. We can offer to share it. We can ask them if they're interested, but we cannot predict or control whether they'll see anything or whether it'll be helpful to them. It's an interesting phenomenon,
it's a very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I asked Sick that question once. I said, how come some people really, really get affected by this, by your talks? By being around you, they get really affected, and other people don't. No matter how much time they spend with you, they just don't get affected. And he said, it's not their time. That was his answer.
Well, they're not ready, I think.
He'd either say it's not their time or they're not ready.
Yeah.
That was it.
I really love, there's a couple of other metaphors in the book that I love that talks to that. One is the butterfly emporium.
Mm-hmm.
And the other and the other one's the taxi stand. And I've had people feed back to me how valuable both of those were for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do the taxi stand.
You want me to read the taxi stand?
Yeah.
25, I think.
Oh, thanks, George. I'm really prepared.
And for anyone who hasn't got the book yet, we will put a link underneath the recording, and there was a link in the Facebook group, and it is available on Amazon and all other good booksellers.
I like this one too. I like the taxi. Imagine you are at a taxi stand. Each taxi that passes by is a thought. So you're at a taxi stand, and each taxi is a thought. If a fearful thought stops and you open the door and it gets in, I guarantee you won't like the ride. If the fearful thought stops and you don't get in, it will simply drive on and disappear into the horizon. Imagine there are taxis that bring you to depression, confusion, jealousy, and all sorts of painful emotions. All those taxis are no problem for you if you simply don't get in. The taxi stand itself is quite a comfortable place to stay. Some people refer to it as a state of meditation within which thoughts pass through our minds inconsequentially.
Lovely.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
I've had a couple of people come to me and go, oh my God, on that one.
Yeah.
Well, it's just essentially saying, don't pay attention to your insecure thinking. But, I was taught to pay attention to my insecure thinking. And so you just reverse it. You do the opposite. You stop paying attention or getting into your insecure thinking.
Yeah, and I think Christian was pointing to that, about 15 minutes ago when she's seen that she could simply be the observer of that.
Hmm.
The neutral observer.
George, yeah, quite. And well, I've got a supplementary question, but I'm interested what you make of and when those moments, when there is an experience I've noticed where I kind of intellectually know that I'm caught up in my thinking, but I still can't put that down. And I think that's very, very common. I mean, there's other times when I'm completely caught up in my thinking and I don't even remember that the three principles exist. But but there is a stage of but I had it recently. So a family. I was very concerned about a family member, and I did know that no matter what happened with him, my thinking was still an inside job. But I was still in a state of anxiety and concern and so on. Although interestingly, later it just passed and I came back to that deep peace, even though the situation hadn't improved. But I'm curious about how you talk about that with with clients, or even how you understand it in yourself, assuming you have a similar experience from time to time.
You wanted to answer that?
Yeah. Why don't you do?
Okay. Well, I think that it's just, sweetie, can you move your foot?
Yeah.
I think that we all have that experience where, we're very proud of ourselves when we're able to see a thought, an insecure thought coming, or see a state of mind coming, and we go, nope. We're able to just stay out of it. We're very proud. Okay. And then there are other times that we're overcome by our thinking and we're just totally bent, spindled, and mutilated by it. I mean, I know it happens to both of us.
Yeah.
But I think that we get, at this point, we're much more graceful about it. And we don't think there's anything wrong.
We're not concerned about it.
It's like, that's what happens. Sometimes you just get caught. It's like there isn't any perfection in the, it's not like, see, when I first learned this, I thought, oh boy, I can get everything squared away and not have certain experiences happen to me, right? And but you just sometimes you just get really affected, like
sometimes you eat the bear and sometimes the bear eats you.
George, that needs to be a metaphor for the next one. George loves that metaphor.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's you eat the bear and sometimes
the bear eats you.
Yeah. So
I was just reminded of it. Sorry, Linda, go on.
Well, no, I mean, I think that you kind of get used to the fact of that, and you stop thinking there's anything wrong, because it'll lift, like you said, it lifted, and the circumstances didn't change, but the anxiety lifted and you went back to peace of mind, even though the circumstances were the same. And I think that happens to all of us, where we get.
Linda, I actually look for these. I look for the bumps in the road, because every time I've ever come up against a bump, and I've been on a speedboat, I've gone past it. But for the last 8 or so years on the sailboat, they're like little guru moments for me. I know I will learn if I look. I look neutrally. If there's anything affects me, I go, right, it's like a stone. I unturned, right, what? Because gratitude is coursing through me for every little insight that you beautiful people are delivering to me.
We know the other part B, that was part A to the answer to the question. That was part A. Part B is that I am so hopeful that, like, we'll all get caught up in something. I'm profoundly hopeful that I will have an insight, they'll have a new thought around getting caught up. That I'll get it, like, I don't, like, for now, it's like, yeah, I get really caught up and that's what I do. And sometimes, and then it, like you, it leaves, but I think, you know what? Bet I could have a new thought around that. So I'm just ultimately hopeful about new thought, about anything, any human experience. It's like, how can I see that different? It's my
and the one that George says, sorry, I'm interrupting. When George says regularly, because I listen to all the tapes and all the stuff regularly, in part because of the book and so on. When something that's stuck with me is, he says, and I find myself saying it with others, that we're going through a learning curve.
Yeah.
So I am so excited about every single learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, I think that people, if they step back from it, I think people understand that life is still a full contact sport. You know, and sometimes it's hard for us to to get that. So we think, well, uh, I don't know what we think at those times, but that's the nature of life. So anybody who thinks that life isn't a full tech contact sport is kidding themselves.
Yeah, I love that, George. That's lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely.
George McRae, you mentioned another story, and I can imagine anybody watching or listening might be keen to hear that one since it was raised. Would you like to read that one? Or
which one?
Something about butterfly? The butterfly?
Butterfly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can read the butterfly one, definitely.
Yeah.
And perhaps, and then you can tell us why you like it so much.
Yeah.
The Butterfly Emporium. Intellectually knowing something and truly understanding something are on two separate continuums. Intellectually knowing is agreeing with the logic of something. True understanding is spiritual. It comes from an insight of internal reflection that reveals to a person something more profound than what they saw before. When people have an understanding, something within them is affected. The way they see life is permanently enhanced. This is where true change occurs in human beings. Sometimes people think that to achieve understanding, they must do the same things they do to achieve intellectual knowledge. They read instructional guides, study facts, or spend time in contemplation. This is an innocent mistake. It's a mystery why understanding occurs when it does. No amount of intellectual effort will bring it out. Gaining a moment of understanding is like having a butterfly land on your shoulder. You have no control over whether or not it occurs. If you go to a butterfly emporium, it's certainly more likely to happen than if you go to a corporate lobby, but it's still not guaranteed. It comes when it comes, and you can't make it happen. Of course, you can reduce the chance of it happening by running fast, for example, or flailing your arms. And you can improve your chances by sitting still and being quiet with yourself. But in short of that, you just have to be patient and wait for the butterfly to land. No amount of reading and intellectual knowledge will guarantee an insight will come. This is a beautiful thing about the human mind. At any moment of any day, we are on the brink of a spiritual understanding.
Wonderful. I love that.
That
Absolutely love that.
That might be my favorite metaphor. Well, you know,
very touching.
the what I heard that sent me on the chase for metaphors is Sydney Banks. He he said to me, you know, George, I think metaphors is your specialty. Then I didn't, for years, I didn't think about that or remember it. But then at some point, I realized, gee, that's really true. I really it's easy for me to come up with metaphors and not so easy for me to come up with other ideas. So I realized that metaphors was really the was the let me see how to say it. Metaphors was the
way
the way of my yeah my way.
Yeah. Yeah. Your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely, and it's interesting that that I think each of us probably has to find our own way of speaking to it. But it really struck me reading your book how many of your metaphors and just that whole thing of talking about the understanding via metaphor has just unconsciously slipped into the way that I talk about it. And I'm immensely grateful for that. I'm immensely grateful for it. So.
Well, you know what people tell me? People tell me that the way to read the book is to just do 3 or 4 pages at a time.
Yeah.
So I had this businessman who said that, George, he says, I'm used to, going, reading a book and getting through it in a hurry. But I found myself contemplating things. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I can't go so fast when you're reading your book. I just can't. I have to take time to reflect on it.
Nice. It's interesting for me, George, as well, from my subjective point of view. Some of the metaphors in the book, for me, I go, oh yeah, I kind of get that. And then I read another one like the placebo effect, the placebo.
Yeah.
And man, it's got so much depth for me.
It does. Absolutely. Yeah. It's very profound.
Because for a while after the first time I read it and even illustrated it, the only thing I seen in placebo was, okay, I get it. If my mind thinks a certain way about anything, then if I think this thing works, this glass of water, this anything, I'll feel better. So I seen it at that level.
Yeah.
But the one I missed was, and we've got so much intelligence in our being that we could actually rectify something physically.
Yeah.
So and then another, I just kept getting these levels of the placebo, all pointing to the power of thought, of course.
Yeah. Well, I'm really appreciate the opportunity that you've given us to consider metaphors. And George, I really appreciate the brilliant job you've done of illustrating the metaphors. Yeah. So I wanted to thank everybody for doing this with us.
Well, thank you. And would you be up for some questions?
I'd love some questions. Yeah.
I'm saying that. I hope people will come in. You Scottish people, you better come in and ask some questions. No, really, seriously, folks. If you have some questions, it's a wonderful opportunity.
We'd love to take some questions.
And the other thing I would say is that anyone asking a question beautifully asks it for all of us.
Thank you, George. You're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. And if you want to come in, just unmute yourself and come in, please. Kathy, it's lovely to see you here.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi there. This is a wonderful experience for me. Way off in Minnesota, we've been having blizzards and schools closed the last 2 days. So this is a gift. But I think what I want to say, and it's both to Linda and George, but in particular today to George. I met the two of you back about 1995, and I'm almost as old as you are. And the two of you together are among my most important teachers. So this is a joy to see you today, but I want to tell you why. I first trained as a public speaking teacher for high schools and then college. And I've always thought of you, George, as the golden tongue. Absolutely the golden tongue. There's nobody in the whole of the three principles, even today, who begins to match you as a speaker. And today I saw the heart of that beautifully. And if you go back and play this webinar someday, watch George as a speaker, because a speaker is expression from the very depths of who we are. And your smile, your vibrance, your incredibly improved speaking in the last 2 or 3 years is just a joy for me to see. And part of what I remember, and perhaps you can talk about this a little bit, part of what I remember is that you always talked to folks when they would say, how shall we go about teaching or presenting? And you'd say, aim for the middle, meaning don't go too high, don't go too low for whoever is in your audience.
Yeah.
And I think the metaphors are a perfect tool for doing that, especially in a time of, let's say, global controversy about where does spirituality fit in mental health, in political discussions, everything, everywhere. What did it feel like for you to be that kind of a speaker? Because you're still doing it today. I felt it. And it's not just words.
Yes. Well, I think the thing that I have going for me is I think that I'm really heartfelt. I really mean what I'm saying, which I think carries the day for me. That's really the only thing I have to concern myself with is George Pransky heartfelt, or is he just bullshitting? And when I ask my question, if I'm just bullshitting, I'm a little sheepish about it. And then when I'm heartfelt, I love being heartfelt.
And it's always obvious because you enjoy watching yourself speak so well and with such energy. I could see you laughing at yourself when you were successful. It was just great.
Well, thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Compliment. That's really delightful what you just said.
Thanks.
And Kathy has also played a part in sharing this work in Scotland. We did a program here for teachers a few years ago, and Kathy, who has a vast experience of working with teachers in university, hosted a number of calls for those Scottish teachers. So it's lovely that you've joined the call, Kathy. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to ask George or Linda or the other George anything? Emma.
Hi. Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to meet you, both Georges and Linda and everybody else. Because I came across the three principles in April last year, so a year ago, and I was in a really bad place at the time, and a friend had said to me, even though I'd spoken to 100 times, you know, press this button, I'll put this app on and press this button, Emma, you know. And I've spent a lot of time lying on a massage mat in a lot of pain. And I listened to Sid's tape and woke up. And it was the most profound feeling. And although it didn't last, I've since got it again. But I'm just my question would be, when they talk about going deeper, you know, I understand what they mean by, you know, listen to the feeling, but I don't understand what going deeper means. Could someone explain that, please?
What I say, I think deeper means going in the direction of the profound. I think that's where the depth is. If you go in the direction of profundity,
yeah, that's
what deep turns out to be.
Right. But in going deeper, is are you going to get? Is your wisdom going to come through more?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So
right.
what you're saying would be purer. That's another way to say it. What you're saying is purer than usual or something like that.
It just means more understanding.
Yeah.
More understanding. Right. Okay. Right.
You get more understanding about life and people and yourself, and you just get more understanding. And that, in my mind, that equates to deeper. You're just deeper, and more understanding is a deeper level of consciousness. See,
right.
It's really simple. It's just you start to you can see it in yourself, because as you get, quote, deeper or have more understanding, you get more quiet about life, or you settle down in yourself.
Yeah.
You settle down.
You settle down. I like that.
Yeah, you settle down when you get deeper. But deeper, you know, it can be misleading. The word can be, what does that mean, deeper? But it just means you have more understanding, and so you're not so fraught.
Caught up in your caught up in your thoughts.
Yeah, or worried, or you don't have to think about things as much.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
I like that.
Yeah, that was very well put across. Yeah.
That's beautifully said.
I'm part of Judith Sedgman, Christine Heath's the program.
Oh, good.
Yeah, which I, you know, it just feels like, I know someone said about winning the, I don't know, I can't remember when you discovered Sid. Well, I just feel like I've won the lottery, you know, because I've, you know, it's just changed my life. And Christine and Judy, and it's just brilliant. Anyway, nice to meet you all. Thank you.
They're the dynamic duo, Christine and Judy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The terrible twins. Yeah.
They're really good. Really good.
But I'm in the UK as well. So my brother lives in Scotland, but I'm in England, you know, Newcastle upon Tyne.
The other thing I would say is that it took me a while to see that deeper meant simpler.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's profound.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I was so busy cooking up a storm up here that when I kind of stopped giving that so much of attention, I settled kind of thinking from here, or seeing from here, or feeling from here, and it got simpler and simpler. And in that lovely thing that Linda and George said, settling down, things that looked complicated got simpler.
Yeah, that's a really good. That's really good, George. It's just like, yeah, it's simpler, so you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I've always had a very busy mind. I'm diagnosed ADHD and autistic. And Christine said an interesting thing the other day that, you know, I hadn't heard because she'd obviously said it before. She's, you know, just what oh, I can't remember what she said exactly, but it was to well, she always says listen for the feeling, but I remembered what she said when I got into a panic yesterday, and you know, I got in touch with that feeling, came out of my head, and understood how to get that feeling for the first time, just because Christine realised I was autistic, so she had to kind of say something bit different for me. You know, I wasn't getting it when she was saying it in the group, for instance. But then she said, you know, in a kind of way that my brain understood. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining the call. We're sort of coming towards the end of our time today, and I'm just wondering if any of you, bearing in mind that this is part of this burgeoning group with the purpose of sharing the principles, if you have any thoughts that are occurring to you today about what are you seeing currently that's helpful in that of getting this message wider. And thank you for everything you've already done, because I know it's been a lifetime's work. But I am curious if there's anything that occurs to you today.
I'm sorry. Could you restate that question? I'm not quite understanding.
Well, this webinar is part of the Three Principles Scotland initiative, and I'm just wondering if anything occurs to you about what can be helpful for anyone that's wanting to share this more widely. Is there anything fresh that's occurring to you about being effective in doing that?
Just do more of these.
More of this.
No, but Christian, you're really good at them. You're a really good moderator. You ask really good questions.
That's very kind of you.
No, but I'm not being kind. I that's what I see, and I think you're really good at it. You should do more of these because you ask the right questions.
Yeah, you're very good.
You're very good at asking the right questions. The right questions that bring it deeper.
And you bring it out, out something.
Yeah, that bring it deeper. Yeah, and more profound. You should do as many as you can.
Well, thank you, and it is something that I quite enjoy. And there are other people, because George is also a key part of this Three Principles Scotland, as is Lynn O'Brien, who's on the call, and there are a number of others who are not on the call who are part of this group. So, yes, thank you for that, and that advice will be taken and followed. Watch this space. Yeah.
And I also wanted to thank Kathy Marshall for what she said. I really appreciated what you said, Kathy, and it really affected me.
Yeah, it was very kind of you to say that.
And I want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
I want to make a tiny comment there. In all of education research, we know that when students learn from a teacher that they know really cares about them, that it's life-changing.
Oh, yeah.
That's what the two of you have done. Absolutely. And Christian, this webinar, if properly edited, has an unlimited value for all time. Not from us as participants, but from your first interaction about the metaphors and so on. And I think it's a way of growing your group from Scotland. I came because of who you were featuring, and I knew you. But that's my suggestion for growing your group. Cut out things like I'm saying right now. But no, seriously. So it's been a joy in this snowy country to connect with all of you today. It's
and this is
awesome.
This is said from someone who's been in this understanding for how many?
A very long time.
Yeah,
Almost 30 years.
Yeah, 30
and
years.
As we age, we all know, because George and I are almost the same age, we face life changes. Very significant life changes, sometimes both partners at the same time. And it cannot be understated how important this understanding is for navigating changes even at this stage in life.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you. Lovely. And thank you, everybody. A real particular thank you to you, George and Linda, joining us. I know it's early in the morning there, and I really, really appreciate it. It's an absolute honor. But thank you, everybody, and of course, not least George McRae. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, George McRae. I wanted to do a shout out to George McRae, the genius illustrator.
Well, when Linda came on at one point to guide me with illustration, she said it so eloquently and simply, it struck a real chord with me. George, the illustration styles and the subject matter needs to be, the feeling needs to be right.
Yeah.
And then that was a guide. Lovely guide.
Yeah.
I was a little bit stuck. I was a little bit stuck on which way to go. She said, check out the feeling. I was, all right, okay, it's that way.
Boy,
I hope everybody...
That said, I hope people enjoy the book, the metaphor book.
Well, I'm loving it, and anyone who hasn't got it yet, I can highly recommend it. I can highly recommend it.
That's my publicity push. What I just said represents the publicity push.
Marketing guru as well. Thank you very much. Listen, thank you, everybody. It's been absolutely wonderful, and I really, really appreciate it.